Hello all, welcome to Rupa's online tutorials. Today I'm going to discuss a very important chapter, database concepts in your second PUC computer science. So here we're going to discuss some of the frequently asked questions in your previous board exams. I would suggest you to go through your textbook completely for this particular lesson, and then also look at this particular video as a reference material. So coming to this particular chapter, let's look at some of the basic terminologies which is used in the databases. These questions are generally asked for 1 mark or 2 marks. So starting with, what is a data? See, generally we use data and information interchangeably. So in our day-to-day use, we do not differentiate between what is data and information. But here we need to write the correct definition in exam point of view. Data is defined as a collection of facts, figures, statistics, which can be used to produce meaningful information. Okay, for example, I just have some words there, some group of characters I put there as Romy and some number as 16. Now, what does this actually mean? Now, if I'm going to give a particular meaning to this, then the meaningful data is known as information. So if you see the definition for information here, okay, if you see the definition for information here, the meaningful data is known as information. Okay, so here what do I mean by saying meaningful data? So meaningful data here is, I have given the name as Romy and the age as 16, or I can say that Romy is a name of a cat, and and it is living in the house number 16. So it can be anything like this. So once it has a particular meaning, then it is called as information. But throughout our lesson, we will be discussing and we will be using these terms interchangeably. Okay, the next important term that you should learn is what is a database. So database is a collection of logically related data. So what I mean by saying logically related data, for example, if I'm going to have a student database, so what are the properties of a student generally when we are talking about a student's marks card or anything like that? So we'll need the student register number, his name, then the subjects that he has taken the exam, what is his total, what is his percentage. So these data is related to one another, isn't it? So a database is a collection of logically related data. So I'm just talking about one student record. Now if I'm going to put, let us say in one particular class there are 100 students, and I'm going to put all these students is one set of information, one set of logically related data, then we can call it as a database. Okay, and then we have the term DBMS. So what is the full form of DBMS? DBMS stands for Database Management System. Okay, the Database Management System. So here if you see this particular thing, okay, so DBMS is this. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of problem with the pen. Okay, but yeah, so here we have a D, okay, and then we have a B and MS. So sometimes they ask you for 1 mark the full form of DBMS, and you need to write it as Database Management System. Here, what is DBMS? A DBMS is a software, so this word is very important here, that allows creation, deletion, definition and manipulation of data. Always remember the word manipulation means, the word manipulate means to change. Okay, so here the DBMS is a software. What is a software? It's a set of programs or set of instructions given to the computer. And what are the instructions going to do? It is going to create, delete or define or manipulate the data. Examples of DBMS, this may be asked for 2 marks. Okay, SQL server, a SQL server, it is pronounced as SQL server, Oracle, MySQL, Sybase, DB2, etc. These are some of the examples of the databases. Now earlier, I mean, database is a larger term. Like one type of DBMS is known as the RDBMS, which has been used nowadays. So R here stands for Relational DBMS. Okay, so what is the speciality of Relational DBMS? See, Relational DBMS is also a software that allows creation, deletion and definition of data, but this is arranged in the form of tables. Okay, so this is the main difference between the normal DBMS and the RDBMS. So these tables are also known as relations. And what does this table consists of? It consists of rows and columns. These horizontal lines here, the horizontal lines that you see here, these are known as rows, and these vertical lines here, these lines are known as columns. So a DBMS, RDBMS is made up of rows and columns. So this is the main thing that we'll have to be talking about. So some more terms that has been used in DBMS that we are going to look now. Okay, when we talk about the databases or the RDBMS, where we are going to pay more attention to, we have something known as files and then records, fields, etc. So what do you mean by that? See, if you see here, a file is a basic unit of storage in computer system. Okay, the basic unit of storage is known as a file. Now, if you see this particular thing, I told you in the previous slide that the tables are made up of rows and columns. So if you observe here on the top, I have taken one particular table here of employee table, and if you see this, it is having some headings here: employee ID, name and salary. Now here you have got some details here also, like 4 and the name of the employee is Rima and the salary is 40,000. So here in RDBMS terms, this particular row which I am going to see here, this row is telling about Rima, her employee ID is 4 and her salary is 40,000. So this is a logically related data. So record in a table represents a set of related data. So this particular row is known as a record. It is known as a record. It is also known as, there is one more word for this, it is known as a tuple. Okay, it is not tuple, it is tuple, T-U-P-L-E. So a tuple or a record is nothing but a set of related data. Now a table can consist of many records. Okay, it can be made up of many records. So how do we define a table? So if you see this particular definition here, a table is a collection of data elements organized in terms of rows and columns. So let us say that there are 50 employees in the table, 50 employees in the company, then everything is known as an employee table. Okay. Now if you see here, you have these headers, these headings here. These headers are nothing but the properties, okay, the attributes or the properties of this particular employee. Okay, the employee ID, the name, the salary, etc. So these are known as, the column headings are known as, either it's known as a field or it is also known as attributes. Okay, so these are the few terms that you should know in RDBMS. So you can see here, tuples, records are also called as tuples, and each column is identified by a header called as attributes or field. So these are the fields. So here we have the employee ID field, the name field and the salary field. And then the another term that we need to know here is domain. Domain is nothing but the set of values for that column. So as I told you earlier, if there are 50 employees, the name of all the 50 employees, the name, the values that is present in this column is known as a domain. And then what is an entity? An entity is nothing but an object such as a table or form. Okay. Now this is another 5-mark question that's generally asked. It's a very common question. Like a common question means it's a common sense question. What are the applications of database? So we are actually using the database everywhere. Like wherever you go nowadays, you are seeing people sitting before the computer typing something out there. You go to a bank, there they are using computers for storing their data. You go to a college or school, they are storing data for student information. So this is a very general knowledge question. So this actually requires no teaching as such. So these kind of questions, please attempt them in your exam and make it a point to write 5 points if it comes for 5 marks and 3 points for 3 marks, so that it will be like you will be getting the marks. So looking at some of the applications of database here, banking, in the banks it is used for customer information. Okay, it is used for customer information, for loan information and transactions. In schools and colleges, for student information, course information, preparing marks card, etc. And in credit card transaction, for the purchase of credit cards and monthly generation of statements. Sales, for customer information, product information, etc. And for in railways, for ticket reservation and schedule informations. So these are some of the common applications that I have given. You can write it on your own and think where else you have seen databases being used. Okay, now this is another important question, 5 marks question. What is the difference between manual and computerized data processing? See, manual data processing means before data was stored inside the computer. Okay, before the databases came in, I mean, it has to be stored in the computer. Manually, if you remember, in the olden days, data was stored in the form of files. It was stored in paper, and it was placed in a big filing system. If you've seen the olden movies where they would have stored this data in in big shelves, they would have kept loads of files. Or even if you go nowadays, you to go some government offices, you will see lots of files which have been stored and a lot of papers being filed in there. So that kind of filing system is known as manual data processing. Manual means what? We are using our pen and paper to store the information. Electronic data processing. Electronic data processing is nothing but mainly you're using your computers or your devices to store information. So what is the difference between manual and electronic data processing? This is also a very common question that is asked for 5 marks. Okay, the answer is here. See here, the volume of data which is processed is limited. The volume means the amount of data that is processed, whereas in an electronic processing this is quite large. Here large quantity of paper is used because we have to write down in the paper and then only we are going to store the information, whereas here less quantity of paper is used. You may say that we don't need paper at all, but sometimes we may be using it for generating the reports or taking some printouts. Okay, speed and accuracy of job execution is limited. So because we are manually storing it, okay, we tend to become tired. We are human beings, isn't it? We cannot be continuously doing work. But whereas here the job executed is faster and accurate. Labor cost is high. Yes, so this is how much work done, that much money has to be paid. Here labor cost is economical. Okay, it is economical because initial cost of setting up a computer is all expensive, but later over the period of time it becomes economical. Here the storage medium is paper, and here the storage medium is the secondary storage medium. Secondary storage medium is your hard disk, your pen drive, your CD, it can be anything. Okay, hope so this is clear. This is also a very, very important question, like it just come for 5 marks. Okay, and it's a very simple question. It says explain data processing cycle. So what is data processing cycle? I'm sure you would have remembered in your first PU the block diagram of the computer. Okay, the block diagram of the computer looks like this, isn't it? You have the input unit, and from there the data goes into the memory unit, and then data is sent for the CPU for processing, and from CPU after processing it goes back to the memory unit, and from the memory unit it goes back to the output unit, that is your monitor. This is your block diagram of the computer, which you have learned in the first chapter of your first PU. Now here the simplest way of remembering this particular question, data processing cycle, is this block diagram. Yes, why I am telling this is if you observe this particular steps here, you have data input, you have data processing, you have storage, you have output, and finally you have communication. Okay, so instead of this particular thing, you can just use the word data here. Yes, you have data input, then the memory unit is going to help you for storage, the CPU is going to help you for processing, and the output is going to use for result. But apart from that, there is a fifth one, because it's a 5-mark question. So the communication part of it. Okay. But since if they ask you what is data processing cycle, then the data processing cycle is nothing but how data is processed to get the final information, because that's how we define. Data is finally processed to get some meaningful information. So if the steps are asked for say 1 mark, 2 marks, it may be asked what is the thing, then you can just name the steps. But if it comes for 5 marks, then you need to explain each of this particular steps. But for this, you just have to write one line about it. Okay. So here data input means to input data into the computer. Okay. Simple. You need to input the data into the computer. How will you input the data? Using a keyboard. And what is the kind of data that you're going to input? Letters, digits, symbols, etc. So simple answer it is. Data processing. What is processing? Processing is nothing but you're going to do some calculations. What kind of calculations? Some sorting, searching, indexing. Okay. So that is known as data processing. Storage. The data that is not currently used has to be stored. So where will it be stored? It has to be stored in either the primary memory or the secondary memory. But primary memory is a working memory. The RAM is a working memory. Just in the previous slide I told you that all the processing is done by the primary memory. The secondary memory is like a hard disk or pen drive where the data can be stored for future use. And output. The word output means you always remember the result or information after processing is known as output. The output can be hard copy or soft copy. What do you mean by hard copy? Hard copy means your printouts, and soft copy is the files that you're going to store in the computer. And the last one is communication. Now this data input, process and output, it can be done on the remote locations also nowadays because of the computer networks. Okay, because computers are connected to one another and the sharing of resources is possible. The communication over wired or wireless medium has become very common nowadays. So you can send this data through the email, or you can process the data through the different remote locations, or you can use the websites for various purposes. Okay, hope so this is clear. This particular question is a very easy question. Please attempt if it comes. Okay, then you have the data types of DBMS. This is also being asked. Data types of SQL, DBMS is asked. So here we have similar to your C++. In your C++, if you remember, we have 5 data types. That is, you have int, you have char, you have float, and then you have double, and then you have void. So here we are having a few extra data types. For example, your integer, it holds whole numbers without fractions. That means you will have numbers like 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 8, 2, 4, -7, -57. It can be anything, but it doesn't have a decimal point. Single and decimal precision, or float or real numbers. Okay, that will have decimal numbers, for example 3.4, 5.678, or anything up to the exponent. Logical data type has only 2 values, that is true or false, and character will include letters, numbers, symbols, etc. So if you remember the char data type here, we put it in single quotes like this. So here we call it as the character data type. And a string data type, here in the string data type we have something called as varchar2. Okay, in databases we use this particular data type called as varchar2 to store strings. So this is a group of characters. Okay, they are known as strings. Date fields. Okay, do you want to put anything like date, or it is also known as date time. In SQL you have something known as a date time field, so which is going to accept the date entered in a date format. Okay, particular date format can be a short date, like for example 12 March. You don't write it like 12 March completely, like you may just write it as MAR for short form. So short date, long date, and then date and time. Okay, and then you have different parameters there, and then you have a currency field also in DBMS. So currency field is like you can accept a dollar form, like if you want to enter some currency or money value, a dollar or a rupee or anything, but by default it is a dollar. So these are some of the commonly asked questions. Okay, now coming to the advantages of DBMS. See, DBMS, a database is stored in a central location and shared among multiple users. So you can imagine here DBMS is there in a central location and there are many users, I'll just name it as U1, U2, U3. There are many people who are sharing this particular data. Okay, so what are the advantages of DBMS? When data is being stored like this and it is being shared among many people, what are the uses? Okay, first one is known as controlled data redundancy. See, the word redundancy means, always remember, the word redundancy means repetition of data. Okay, the repetition is known as redundancy. So but here we use the word controlled data redundancy. Why we say it is controlled? Because you cannot completely remove the redundancy. Redundancy has to be, you can reduce, or you can reduce the duplication of data. It ensures consistency and saves storage space. So what we mean by saying consistency? See, the consistency means, see, a database, it will contain, a DBMS will contain lot of data. Okay, and an RDBMS, I told you, data is stored in the form of tables. So if I'm going to have, let us say, a student table, I have a student marks table, and then I have a student sports table, sports data. Those different data is available. So any change I make in one of the tables, it has to be reflected in all the tables. The correctness of data is known as consistency. Okay, consistency means whatever correctness, whatever changes I make in one place, it has to be reflected in all the places. It is called as consistency. Okay, enforcing data integrity. See, data integrity refers to the validity of data. Validity means what? Whether I am entering an accurate data or not. Okay, suppose for example, the student register number, the data type, just now we discussed it, it has to be an integer or a number, a numeric value. If it has to be a numeric value or a number value and I am trying to enter a string instead of a number, then there is no validity of data. So the DBMS will ensure that there is data integrity, that you are entering the proper type of data in the DBMS. Then data sharing. Okay, data can be shared. Now if you see this particular picture, whatever I have shown you here on the top, here you can see that the DBMS is a centralized location, so it is going to share the data among different users. Data security, you have security constraints. See, the word constraint, always please remember the word constraint means the conditions. Okay, ensures that only users with access rights can be used in the DBMS. And backup and recovery, the RDBMS provides backup and recovery systems in case of hardware or software failure. What do you mean by that? Like when there is some transaction happening, when I'm, let us say, I'm updating the student's record. Okay, I'm updating the student record, I'm making change in the marks record, and when this kind of changes are happening, let us say that there's a power failure, there is a hardware failure, or some problem with the program that has been running. So the RDBMS will provide a backup. It will have some recovery subsystems. It will see that, the whole thing is not erased, the whole thing is not gone. Okay, so all that is taken care by the DBMS also. So this is also a 5-mark questions that is generally being asked. Okay, the features or advantages of DBMS. So, and then we talk about DBMS users. See, these questions may come for 2 marks and 3 marks and all. So these are all simple questions, and I would definitely want you all to go through this. See, DBMS users, end users. End users are the people who use the database for getting the required information. If I'm going to use, if you've seen in the malls and everywhere where people are using data to enter the billing and things like that, they are the end users. They are the people who are using the DBMS for a particular purpose. Okay, it is done by querying, updating and generating reports. So what do I mean by the word querying? Querying means to question. Okay, the word querying means to question. Question what? Question the database. What will you question the database? You want to get a particular set of information. Let us say you want to get the list of customers who have purchased more than say 2,000 rupees for that day, or who have purchased more than 10,000 rupees for the day. Then you can query to the database, okay, generate a set of customers who have purchased more than 10,000 rupees in my shop. So that is a query. Or in a student database, you want to know the students who have scored more than 90%. You can pose a query. So this is known as querying. Okay. System analysts. System analysts are the people who are going to analyze the requirement of the end users and develop specifications for the user. So the end users are who? People who are going to use the database. Now they may give some requirements. They may give that, okay, this particular, they may give a feedback kind of thing, that, okay, I want this kind of this kind of conditions to be applied, or I don't want, for example, let us say, the decimal number should be only 2 numbers or 3 numbers. It should be like in the form of rupees and paisa. So these kind of requirements are given by the end users, which is taken care by the system analyst before designing the database. Database designers are responsible for storing the data in the database, for creating schema to represent and store the data. Schema means what? The structure of the database, like how exactly the database should be, it should be how the data should be entered in the database, so that it is easy for the end user, because finally this end user is going to use the database. The application programmers are the people who implement the requirement in programs. Programs are what? Set of instructions. So these people are the ones who are going to write the code for the DBMS. And database administrator, now he is the all-in-all person. Okay, he is responsible for authorizing access to the database. So what is his responsibilities? His responsibilities is to ensure security of the DBMS. Okay, so security of DBMS means anybody cannot have the access rights for it. Access means who can access the DBMS. I'm sure you people have used the Microsoft Teams or any such app, wherein you are given a login ID and a password, or in your Gmail, for example, you use your login ID and password. Why is all this given? Because you want an access. You need to authorize the access, like who is going to use this particular DBMS. Okay, so ensuring the security of DBMS, monitoring its use, and for getting the needed software and hardware resources. Okay, so so this much I have covered in this particular video session. In my another video, my second part of the video, I would like to cover the rest of the things like data abstractions, levels of databases, data independences, and data models, etc. Hope you like this video and find it useful. All the best for your exams once again. Thank you for watching, and if you have any if you have any questions, please put it in the comments below. Thank you and all the best once again.